afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the executive committee to order. It is June 17th. Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call the June 17th, 2021 executive committee to order. It is 11:31 a.m. We are meeting remotely due to the pandemic. Ms. McManus, can you take roll?
Yes. Director Rosenthal?
Yeah, sorry, I've had a little computer difficulty and my class just ended, so it was kind
Okay.
of done a couple things.
All right.
Now, thank you.
Director Catlin?
Here.
Director Sloan?
Here. Hello.
Director Geisinger?
Here.
Chair Rivera Malpiedi?
Here.
Chair Vince Busick?
I'm here, and the chair.
And the chair.
You got a raise.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the first thing on our agenda is to approve the agenda for the July, I cannot believe this, the June board meeting. Do I have a movement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on the agenda items for the June board meeting? All right. Seeing none, I guess we're right down to other matters. Any other matters to come before the board? Is that correct? It feels so fast to me. Are there any other matters to come before the board?
Pardon me, Madam Chair. We need
What
to
am I
just
missing?
can we take a vote on the agenda.
All right. All in favor of the agenda, please say aye. So,
Aye. Aye.
aye. Any
Aye, aye,
opposed?
aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you, General Counsel. Okay, now we can go to other matters. Is there any other matter to come before this committee? Yes, Drew. Secretary Busick.
It's just a question, actually, and I'm wondering when and if we're going to be going back to in-person meetings and subpart 1, whether when we do, we will continue to do public comment in a hybrid fashion, either in person or remotely. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. I think the last I heard, and it changes daily, is that we still will go through September. Is that correct, General Counsel, to your recollection?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Yeah, and maybe Mr. McKay, if you have any update, or Ms. McManus, because I know that you guys have been part of the meetings with the staff on that stuff, if you want to jump in.
So there are some challenges with coming back to meet in person and have what the meetings look like currently and what they used to look like all at the same time, meaning meeting in public and also doing Zoom, and also being socially distanced if at that point we still need to be. I know that a lot of folks are going back to public meetings, but they're not allowing any in-person public participation. Henry Stoppelkamp and Michael Ford are working on looking at some different options for locations. We're not really sure if we'll be able to accommodate what we need to do in RT&D. So we are going to have some challenges in in going back. I don't know what that timeline looks like. We may have to do, part of the board in person, part through Zoom. There's a couple of different hybrid models we're looking at, but right now we don't have a valid in-house space that can accommodate all that we need to do.
Okay. I know that that's cumbersome, Secretary Busick, but this is such a fluid issue. And now there's this new variant that is, I guess, more aggressive, particularly to people who've not been inoculated. And so they have to look at all of that stuff. I do know Mr. Meter meets weekly with the CDC, but we are still mandated by the FTA and all of that because we're public transit, to still do things in place that other people are not being required to do. We'll keep you guys in the loop. We know it.
I was just wondering what the current thinking was. So that answers my question. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And then, the public comment, we've got all of that. So I think we'll just keep you guys in the loop. Yeah, first Vice Chair Geisinger.
Just to follow up on that, for Barbara, before we left the RT&D and our in-person meetings, we were having trouble with the streaming. And aside from the safe distancing and COVID issues, is that a big piece of the issue? We just can't get the internet to work the way we need it to down there, or whatever the problem was?
Well, it's how do we do a Zoom meeting, if we're trying to be socially distanced and everybody has to have a second device in which to be on Zoom as well. And what that looks like technology wise. I also am just going to throw out there that I don't really know what the hiring pool looks like, and I'm down 2 staff members. So I don't know when they'll be in place. And so, in-person meetings take a lot of setup, and they take more to run than what we're currently doing.
And first Vice Chair Geisinger, I think you're absolutely correct. There really was a problem with connection to being able to stream down in the basement of this building, because it's an old building, and
Right.
we just.
Okay.
And I know Mr. McKay had been working on that diligently for a year before, so there's that.
Thanks.
So Director Rosenthal has a question, and then I'm going to ask John to jump in if there's anything that I've forgotten.
Okay. Director Rosenthal.
Thank you. And, I'm trying not to be a naysayer here, but, I kind of agree with Director Busick, and kind of a sense of, as we look forward, how do we meet again? And, that the fact is that, as I understood it from a prior meeting, all the board members have been inoculated, and
That's not true.
Okay, so that was what I had heard from board members, but and if it's not true, then okay. So then I'm so
So
I mean it's a big question.
Yeah, we did have one board member state that they did not get inoculated. So that's why I'm saying that it is not everybody.
So and I hear you on that, and yet that is also the person's choice. At this point, we also have to say, at what point as a society, this is a bigger societal issue where people make choices as to whether they want to or not, and whether one person should guide the decision of 15. This is, I'm just being perhaps a bit blunt on this, that we need to also make a decision for the basis of the 14. And then also, and I get it, that what Barbara is saying, that, as we get new staff and things like that, we have to keep that in mind. Maybe they're not inoculated, and I get that too. But there's no necessity for board members to be socially distant. We don't have to be, because we are, except for one member, all inoculated. So I just want what I'm kind of getting at here is that, we should also base it on the fact of we are pretty much all inoculated, and we should be able to meet. I get that there is a technological issue of meeting in that basement, perhaps, that we don't have a T1 or what have you to be able to stream. But I guess what we just need to move forward at some point to meet. And I get it that Mr. Ford and Ms. McManus and Ms. Snyder and others are working on those issues diligently, but I hope that we will continue to have a say in that matter to say, like, hey, let's move this along to be able to go back to some semblance of normalcy. Thank you.
You.
So Chair, I'd like to let everyone know that Director Tisdale has joined the meeting as well as part of the role. And also, whether we're inoculated or not, as you will see, did see and will see again at the strategic planning session, the CDC guidelines for us businesses and transportation is to continue to be socially distanced. Now, that may change between now and September. We're supposed to be getting an update in very early July. But right now, as an agency, we still are required to be socially distanced. John, do you have anything to add?
About the technology piece, there is the bandwidth now has finally been routed toward the building. So there was an issue with getting CenturyLink to actually get the pipeline to the building if we were to use the existing system down in RT&D. So without getting too far into the weeds, there's a box there that serves as our the transmitter that sends the signal out to Amazon and beams it back to us. The problem was always just getting the signal from the building out to the internet at large. There are other ways that you can route a stream using different technology. Using Zoom, if we could use the room's existing, or the network that exists in RT&D, there is a way to do it, and it is being contemplated that Zoom is going to be used, or some sort of streaming service would be used going forward, and that the public would be able to participate remotely. Even using a phone, if we were to go back to the old methods of the technology that we had down in there, even using a phone wouldn't really work. It wouldn't be as accessible to people. We could only have a certain number of people on the line at one point in time. So using Zoom or some other form of streaming technology would be advantageous as opposed to going back to the old way of doing things.
Thank you. Director Catlin, I see your hand.
There, I think I got it unmuted.
Yes.
I just from a perception perspective, I attended in person the E470 board meeting last Thursday. And they did a combination, a hybrid of in-person and Zoom. There were a couple of board members that were not in the room, but they also had room for public comment, either via Zoom or in person. And they had all been inoculated. My point being that is also a transportation agency. It's not a public transit agency, but there is, customer contact by virtue of their walk-up customer service center and all of that. So I'd be curious to understand from Mr. Meter what the difference is. I know that we have to have masks and social distancing on our platforms. We have to have masks on our rail and bus. I know that, but I just want to see what the difference is in terms of public meetings, because I just experienced the alternative to that with E470. So I just would be curious to understand that, what Barbara said about, as a public transportation agency, we're required to by the CDC, because it seems like there's some inconsistencies there. Thanks.
Well, it also may be an agency choice because Deborah's been very conservative. I have been to in-person meetings at 1660 Blake, and they continue to be socially distanced.
I will ask the general manager in her report to do an update on that very topic, because I know that it is changing constantly, and I know that they meet on a regular basis, and it's time to get updated again on how we're moving forward. But you're right, there are public meetings starting to take place. I believe Denver City Council is now doing, well, I gotta talk to Stacy Gilmore. I'm not quite sure, but I know they're back in their offices. So there is a lot of change going on currently and it's real fluid. So thank you for bringing that up. Director Rosenthal, I see your hand. Do you still?
Yeah, I don't
have-
want to. I'm not trying to maybe rehash too much or be a stick in the mud, but so if we could maybe drill a little bit deeper on this order from the CDC, we may be a transit agency, but at the same time, as was noted, there are changes, for example, in the socially distancing on buses and things. But as a board, we are not drivers. We are not operators. We are, dealing in an office situation. And to whether the CDC has maybe subsections of this order that relate to whether it is on a bus or train versus, meetings such as this, do they have requirements for offices and people who are a senior leadership team? Are there different requirements? Is it just a blanket order, all employees, all transit agencies at all time, versus is there any drill down that we can look further? And I'm not trying to doubt anyone and what you know at this time. I'm just saying, could we look a little further and deeper into this, into the orders, that we can make sure that that if it does or does not relate to us as a board or as senior leadership team, and how it relates to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. I would just also reiterate the fact that our staff is down 50%. And so we literally have 2 staff people to organize all of that as well. And so this is much more complex than that. But I do think I'll have the general manager do an overview on the CDC requirements, and not just locally, but federally, the requirements for public transit and what does that mean. But then I think the other big piece for us as a board is to recognize that we may not have the infrastructure of the staff that's currently needed to put out on a public meeting, because we're going to kill them. There's only 2 of them. I want to make sure.
No, and I get that.
Okay.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I want safety, but I also want to make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Going once, going twice. All right. Seeing none, that's all we have on our agenda. So I'd like to see if we have a movement to end this meeting. Yeah. Rose?
Oh, just a quick question. My bad, Madam Chair. My apologies. I'm just curious, as treasurer, I know I've been in once to sign checks and things like that. Is there any need for anybody to come in and sign checks, or is that kind of getting done well? And I just want to make sure that we're paying our vendors
Yes.
and all that.
So, yeah, not to worry, Treasurer Rosenthal. What happens is that we get a call weekly, usually to the secretary, and he goes down and signs checks. If I'm there, I sign checks. If nobody's available, they'll call you to come down and sign checks.
Okay.
Checks are signed a week.
All right.
Thanks for asking,
Good.
Bill.
Thanks
Yeah.
for
All right.
checking.
Make
Yeah.
sure we're all good on that.
Okay,
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting and stopping the train, so to speak.
that's all right. So,
To adjourn. I move to adjourn.
Second.
okay, thank you.
Director
Great.
Busick, can you stay on for a moment?
I can.
Thank you.
Anybody opposed to it? Okay, we are adjourned at 11:50. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and
Bye.
Everybody, great to
Barbara,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All
Thank
right.
thank
you.
everybody for your work too,
right,
particularly staff.
yes,
Bye, everybody.
bye.
Barbara, this is still an open meeting because we're on Zoom.
I'll call you.
Okay.